Running is a strange thing. Some people find it on the sidewalk at sunrise. Some find it deep in the mountains, chasing daylight. And some of us find it when life feels heavy, and running is the only thing that makes sense. For some, it starts with 5K. For others, it's a marathon. And for a few, it's 100 miles that changes everything. But somewhere between the first step and the finish line, something happens. Running stops being about pace, or distance, or medals. It becomes about purpose. I'm your host, Ryan Head, and this is Reimagine Running, the podcast dedicated to talking about why we run. Each episode, we'll sit down with runners from every background, trail runners, road runners, beginners, veterans, and talk about their journey. Not just where they've run, but why they run. Because for many of us, running didn't just change our fitness. It helped us find clarity, healing, discipline, hope, and sometimes even ourselves. Whether your why was born on a short leap around the block or somewhere deep inside a long, lonely mile, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Reimagine Running. All right, guys, welcome to the very first episode of Reimagine Running, a podcast dedicated to talking to all runners, regardless of where they're at in their journey, about their story and their why. I have had this idea for many years to roll this out and to have this podcast. As when I've been thinking about this and when I, came up with this idea a few years ago, I was really, really excited to, not only talk to other people about their journey, but understand what makes people click, what makes people what drives them. Because running is it's amazing, right? Especially, I mean, if you're following this, most likely you're a runner of some sort. Um, but running just has a way to impact all aspects of your life. And that to me has been probably the biggest game changer as I've, been on this earth, if you will. When I was, let's just jump in. Let me tell you guys a little bit about me. When I started running, I was probably like, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. I mean, like all of us, we probably like running to some extent. When we're kids, you're playing tag, you're running around with friends, playing basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is, right? And I liked it. I can't say like I was in love with it. It wasn't until I was like in 8th grade, and I've told this story before on other people's podcasts that I've joined, but I had a kind of a funny experience where I got in trouble. My mom was mad at me. I was mouthing off to her, and quite frankly, I deserved to get kicked out of the car. And so she booted me out of the car. And when that happened, I guess I just took off running. And right, you can imagine I'm in like the best running gear ever, right? As a 13-year-old boy, I was in my Vans shoes, Levi's, and a jacket, like maybe more like a coat. It was February, I still remember. And so I ran from a grocery store that was 4 miles away from my house. I ran all the way home. And I remember as I was running, one, I was fueled by adrenaline and just anger as a teenager. But then as I kept going, I was like, this is actually really fun. And next thing I knew, I was like hauling to my house. And I think that was the very first time I realized I really liked running. From there, I ran track in junior high, ran the mile, did a couple other track events. It really wasn't like, and then when I got in high school, I didn't do like any like cross country or track in high school. Funny enough, I played football, I was into baseball, I was into basketball, that sort of thing. But I wasn't much of a track runner. I wasn't like cross country. That just wasn't me. And so, go through that whole process of high school. Unfortunately, in high school, I injured my knee twice and had to have it surgically repaired. ACL, MCL, the meniscus is torn and all that fun stuff. And anyways, it was pretty devastating. I put on a lot of weight. It was a trying time in my life, but I'm grateful for it because that experience helped teach me that regardless of how hard things can get, you can overcome them. And, I didn't do it just once, I did it twice. I hurt my knee and had to have it reconstructed twice, and sometimes I get frustrated when I think back about it because, I always say if I had 2 left knees, I wonder how good I would be on the trails and running and in general. My right knee has a little bit of, you know, what's the word? It doesn't move as well as I would like it to, and so you deal with what you get, right? And I'm just grateful that I did find running when I did, and I'm grateful that I can do it. After high school, I served for my church, a 2-year mission, and I went to Houston, Texas. And it was really fun because a lot of times I'd wake up in the morning, and we were assigned to be with another person. We had a companion, usually around the same age as us, and sometimes we'd get up and run. And I remember just loving it. But the problem with Houston, if you're from Houston or Texas at all, it's hot and it's humid. And so, but I got used to it. I was like, wow, it's kind of crazy how you can get used to weather. And I was just learning this whole time about what running really is. And so was running a little bit out there. My mission was really impactful to me because I feel like, I came closer to God and Jesus Christ, but also, it helped me deal with some really hard things. I learned how to learn another language. I speak Spanish fluently. Some people do know that about me, some don't. But I do speak it fluently. Love it. I think it's awesome to be able to do that. As well as you just go through heartache sometimes out there. You go through tough trials. Um, it's just what happens. And so, I was able to come home from Houston, kind of reintegrate back into life. And sadly, I put on a ton of weight. I got married to my beautiful wife, Jessica. I'll mention her periodically. She's such a great support of me with running, with this podcast, with just all my adventures that I'm constantly on. And my beautiful daughters as well, Zoe and Lacey. But they have just been amazing with me on this journey. But I got home from Texas and I put on a little bit of weight, like I was mentioning, and she was awesome. She still married me. We were dating there for 6 to 9 months or whatever, and we ended up getting married. And from there, I kind of realized I was in a bad place physically. And I would never say that like being overweight is a bad thing. I mean, to each person their own. But to me, I didn't feel good. I was kind of upset where I was at. I remember multiple times getting out of my chair at work and just feeling a lot of pain in my knee. And I told myself, you should be in a different place in this. This is not where you should be right now. And so that's what happened. I just decided at that moment I was going to try to change a lot of aspects in my life. I wanted to get in better shape. I wanted to change a lot of the habits I had developed, and that's what happened. Right? I quit drinking soda. And I know some people always are like, "What is that? A weird religion thing or whatnot?" No, I just chose not to. I don't like how much sugar it puts in my belly. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. To each their own. Again, but to me, I knew how much I was drinking of soda prior, and I just didn't wanna do that again. So I have, it's been over 15 years now since I've drank soda, which I'm grateful for. It's my thing. But then, I just try to clean up my habits and, eat better, try to get more nutrients, vegetables, that sort of thing. And it worked. It was awesome. I was able to drop quite a bit of weight. I dropped about 85 pounds. At that time I was afraid to run. And the main reason why I was afraid to run is because my knee would do this really weird thing where it kind of would like pop out of place. And that's the best way to explain it. I know some people are like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, it would do this weird thing where it kind of like come out of place. And so I'd have to like smack it to get it back in place. And it would work. It helped feel better, but it was scary when it would kind of pop out of place there for a second. So I didn't dare run, but my little brother, which I'm sure one day I'll have him on here, his name's Blake, he was like, "Hey, let's run on a treadmill." And I remember thinking like, "Do I really wanna run on a treadmill?" And I was like, "Let's just do it. Let's just do it. Let's try 1 mile on a treadmill and just see what happens." And, lo and behold, it worked. I did. I ran a mile. We did it at like a 10-minute pace or something. I was like, "Dude, that was amazing. What the heck?" And that really just ignited the fire back in me to running. It kind of brought back that feeling I had when I was a teenager and just the fun I had running. From there, really, I just kind of slowly increased my mileage, going from a mile to 2 miles to a 5K, to a 10K. For a long time, I was stuck at the 8 mile distance with, with running. And from there, then I just kind of just kept going and just see what I was capable of doing. The biggest change for me was I still remember when I had a good friend say, "Hey, you should run a half marathon race." And I was nervous about that. I was like, I don't know if I really want to run a half marathon. That seems a little scary. Like 13 miles seemed like a lot. And it is a lot. Like, it's relative to each person. That's what I always say when it comes to running. It's relative to everybody, and, like, it is something that can be a lot. And, I didn't really do like, I didn't have a coach at the time, didn't really feel like that was for me, and so I just kinda trained, found some stuff online, and was able to put down my first half marathon, felt great about it, and then truly did that for a few years, and then I remember I had a friend that was just like, "You should go for the full marathon." And I was nervous about it, but, I finally did that in 2018. I ran the Ogden Marathon for the first time, and that was an experience. I'm sure that story will come up at some time during, one of these episodes, but, mile 22 was really rough. I remember getting to the end of the canyon, and I had a really dumb mindset when it comes to running marathons at that time, and I almost had to pull out of the race at mile 22. I remember the aid station lady, it was the first aid station, she was like, "Come here." And I was like, "Nope." And she kept saying, "Come on, come here. I need to talk to you." And I was like, "Nope, I'm good." And she's like, "You need to come sit down." And I said, "Nope, I'm gonna keep going." And I basically walked the rest of that race in because I was just in a bad place. Um, so that was a really good learning experience, and it's cool to say that ever since then, I've ran the Ogden Marathon every year that they've had it. There was a year there in COVID. I think one year they didn't do it. I think it was in 2020, and then they did it virtually in 2021. So, but outside of that, and I did it virtually in 2021, but I've ran it every year. I've ran almost, I wouldn't say every marathon in Utah, but I've ran all the major ones, most of the popular ones. And really love that scene. I love road running. I think I'll always love it. It's a fun place to be, but really what has kind of taken over my life, as you can see on my shirt, and I wear this shirt because Wasatch 100 made a big impact in my life and who I am. And so, again, I'm really bad with people telling me stuff. I probably given to peer pressure a little too much. And I had a friend say, "Ryan, you really should, you should try an ultra sometime." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if ultras are for me." And but you know what? I was like, you know what? Why not? It's going to be 5 more miles in a marathon. Let's give it a try. Let's just see what happens. If it goes sideways, we'll never do it again. And so my first ultra, if you will, was a 50K on Antelope Island in 2022. Did that in November of that year. And yeah, I ran it. And I remember getting to the marathon distance and being like, when I took that one more step forward, um, I was like, okay, this is it. Like, this is where you pass from just being a marathoner to an ultra marathoner. And so that was it. And I've still run marathons every year, since then, but truly I have been more focused on the ultra scene, on the trail scene, just because I think to me, I feel like that's kind of where I find more peace. That's where I find more solace. That's where I find, I've kind of found myself. I feel like that's where I should be at this point, just because I feel like it can make a bigger impact, not just with myself, but with the community in general. I've really loved being involved in races. I've really loved running the races and just learning the history about it. And that's part of what we're going to talk about on a lot of these episodes is what I've done on ultras, what other people have done on ultras. But I don't want this to just be solely focused on ultra marathons and trail running. The biggest thing that I really wanted to focus on as I created this podcast is I want to hear everybody's story. I want to hear from road runners. I want to hear from people who are doing their best to just do like a 5K, right? Um, because I want to hear their why. I'm gonna be honest, I even wanna hear from bikers. I think that would be really cool. I'd love to hear from, people who are doing, road biking, mountain biking, you name it. I think there's a place, for them as well, right? All joking aside, like, I do. I think it's fun to hear their why. I actually have a friend who's lined up to do that, and he's a really, really good, mountain biker. I'm excited to bring him on here, in the next little bit. But I think every one of us has a why that really drives us forward to why we actually do any of this, why it's even important to us. So I'm excited to talk more about that. A little bit more about me outside of running. I'm almost 40 years old, coming up on that. I'm an HR professional. I've been doing HR for almost 20 years of my career up to this point. Uh, HR was something I think I always knew I wanted to do. I'm very talkative for those who know me personally. I like to talk to people. I'm very social. And I feel like to be really good at HR, you got to have that a little bit of that in you. So you got to be social, you got to be able to talk with people and be able to communicate with them and so that's really a lot of what my job is. Every day I'm constantly talking on the phone, I'm doing interviews, I'm meeting with my employees. I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I honestly love it. I think it's who I'm supposed to be at this point in my life. Can I say that I'll always be in HR? I don't know. That's a question we'll find out in 10 to 15, 20 years, right? But I really have enjoyed it. Um, a little bit more about me. Big baseball fan, as you can see. I got my Yankees banner up in the back. A lot of people know if you've seen my reels or any of my stuff I usually post on social media. Big Blink 182 fan, and for those who don't know, the skateboard back there, the deck is of Tom DeLonge from the music video First Date. It's an awesome deck. It's still in its wrapper. I don't think I'll ever pull that out. So those are kind of the things that tells a little bit more about me. Obviously, everything else here is just from my races, some of the stuff I've done, some of my belt buckles, some of the races that just mean a lot, some of my dear friends. I'm sure that the background will continue to change as we go forward, just because I do want to continue to just be evolving. I don't want this podcast to just be stagnant. Right now, the focus is on the why. I think the why will always be there, but I can always see us going down, for lack of better terms, maybe some rabbit holes, right? Like we're gonna do some stuff. We're gonna talk about some fun stuff. We'll just see where things go and have a lot of fun with it. So, anyways, so that's a little bit about me. I've already kind of mentioned, my personal life a little bit. With who I am and kind of what I like to do. I've lived here in Utah most of my life. I love Utah. Utah is a great place for the trail scene. It also has just fantastic marathons, lots of great ones, whether it's the Ogden Marathon, the Salt Lake City Marathon, the St. George Marathon, and the list goes on. All three of those races are great. I love supporting the Ogden Marathon and the Salt Lake City Marathon. I'm an ambassador for both of those, and they're both just great races. They're awesome races. I think they're trying their best and they're doing some great stuff. So I think it's awesome. Kind of the direction that the state is going with outdoors. And obviously, Utah is home to skiing, a lot of like recreation areas. It's funny how, you'll hear people badmouth, especially like if you're an NBA fan or sports fan, a lot of famous, if you will, NBA stars will badmouth Utah and they'll be like, "Oh man, Utah's the worst." And I kind of am like, I want people to think Utah's a bad place, because there's so many hidden gems here, and I guess I probably should stop talking about it, right? So we'll leave it at that. There's a lot of hidden gems here. It's a beautiful place to be, and very, very exciting, state with some great stuff happening. So, you know, I've kind of gone into why I run. I've talked about it a little bit, but I want to dive into this a little bit deeper because, I've talked about, ever since I was a kid, you know, that I loved running. It was something that was important to me, but, you know, why? Why do I run? Like, what is driving me? What is really doing this? Early on, I wanted to PR. I wanted to like always be trying to win races or be up at the top. Like I loved clicking on like the website afterwards and seeing the results and being in like the top 10, top 15. And listen, I've had my time. I've won a couple of races. I'm not going to say I've won a ton, but I've ran a few. I've won a half marathon before. I won a 10K before, a couple of 5Ks. Nothing major, not like the Ogden Marathon or anything like that. But I had my chance to win a few things, and it was fun. But um, when I think back about it, I was really obsessed with like being fast, doing really hard workouts, and at times running became a chore. It ceased being fun. It ceased being like something where I was figuring more about myself out. And I think that's when I was like, I have to change. So during the pandemic, that's kind of like probably a good place to go with this. Like in the pandemic, I remember like getting to a point where I was like, I don't even know if I want to run anymore. I'd been running at that point for 7, 8 years, something like that. And it was tough because you'd wake up and there was no races, right? Like every race was all but canceled. Nobody was doing anything. And so you kind of were just like, what am I going to do? Um, and most of your runs, you were just doing to just do. And you hoped that the races would go on. But if we remember anything about 2020, like every race was canceled, like hardly any of them happened. And so I remember almost for a whole year just being like, I don't know if I want to do this any longer. It's not that fun. And I remember being like, I have to find my why. Like, why am I even doing this in the first place? And my why is I don't know if it's easy like to say. I think it's really deep. I think it has a lot to do with like I I wanna be better every day. I wanna try to be a better person. I wanna be an example to not only my wife, to my family, to my kids, to my brothers, to my parents, to, in-laws, all that fun stuff. Um, but I wanna be an example to the community at large, that we can do hard things. That to me is really important. Um, because the thing is like I every doctor I've ever talked to has said, or physical therapist for that matter, and even some family members have said, "Ryan, you shouldn't run. Like, you gotta stop. Your knee has been reconstructed twice. Like, you gotta stop." And, at first I kind of believed it. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I was like, okay, like, I probably should like let this happen for a year or two, and then I need to just like stop. No more running. And as I kept doing it, I felt like my knee got stronger. It wasn't weaker, from all of this. And so I remember thinking like, I thought this was supposed to be like hurting me, not like making me a stronger person. And it's funny that over all this time, my knees are now stronger than they were before I started running. My knees are exceptionally strong. I can climb up mountains. I've done multiple 100 milers that are well over 20,000 feet of vert, climbing, descending. Those aren't problems for me. So I feel like it really helped me be strong. And that's kind of like why I want people, that's why we're doing this podcast, right? Like, I want people to tell their why because like this was my why is I knew I could do it and I want other people to know that they can do it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be running, right? It doesn't have to be biking, it doesn't have to be hiking or climbing or whatever it is, right? It doesn't have to be that. What I want it to be is that you believe in yourself enough that you can go do something, whether that's you can go to college and you get a degree. You can be a good husband. You can be a good spouse. You can be a good wife. You can be whatever. You can be a good son, daughter to your parents. Like, you can find God. You can find whatever your meaning is in life, that you're not lost, that you're not like gone. You're not too far gone. You can find your why, like why you're here, why you exist. Um, and that's the really cool thing is we're going to have some really cool guests on the show that are going to tell you their why. That's exciting for me. That gets me really excited because um, their stories are life changing, and some of them I've kind of had to coax a little bit and just say like, "Hey, I need you to tell your true story. Don't hide from us." And I think that they will. I think that they will, but I want to hear that why. I want to know why they're doing this and how running has helped them find something so different about themselves that now they feel like their life is different. It's a completely different thing. And that's what gets me excited. That gets me excited to give people a forum to share this message. Um, most likely, I don't know how many elite runners I'm going to get on here. Just going to be honest. Maybe I'll have a couple, maybe I won't. Um, my goal is not to have people come on that are the 1%, right? There are very few and far between elite runners that, again, I'm not trying to badmouth them. I think they're awesome runners. But the cold hard reality is the other 95, 99% of us are never going to accomplish anything close to what some of these guys are doing. The rest of us are middle of the pack to back of the packers, and we are just doing our best to survive. Um, and that's the stories I want to hear about. Those are the stories I want to be shared here. Now, right? Will some of these people that I have on here, are they going to be elites that have done some crazy stuff and their story will be wild? Their why? Sure. And I want to hear their story and I would love for them to share it on here. But I really want a lot of the whys to be shared on here to be from people who, like, they didn't even know running could change their lives. They didn't know that there could be something so much more to life than just whatever, right? Like they found out that they can do hard things, that they can overcome life's challenges, that they can be a better person. They can be a good dad. They can be a good husband. They can be a good mother. They can be a good spouse, whatever, right? Like they can go to college. They can hold down a good job and take care of their family and be a good provider. Like that's what I'm excited to pull out of so many of my guests. And that's what I'm shooting for. Like that's what I want to see. I want to see people do that. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this to happen because I think we're going to have some really, really fun guests on that can really help do that. I would be lying to you if I said that, like, I don't struggle with my own self-doubt. Like, running 100 miles is running 100 miles, right? Like, doing the Wasatch 100, the Bear 100, these races, and this goes for any 100 miler, like, it's still 100 miles. And so, like, you know, you have doubt. You sometimes think to yourself, like, I can't do this. Like, I'm going to struggle. And those are the moments when, like, I feel like that's where the training, that's where all of the work you've put in, that's the moment that you're like, yeah, okay. Like, this is what I trained for. This is what I prepared for. Like, it's time to go. And, training can be boring. It can be hard. Waking up every morning or going out every day after work, it gets old. It can be hard. It can be time consuming, but that's how the races are won. And every time I've been on a race, whenever, I've been on a 100 miler and I start to doubt myself and I'm like, I'm not going to make this. Like, I don't think it's going to happen. I always tell myself, like, fall back on, what you've done, the training that you did do, because you are ready for this. Like, don't second guess yourself. You're ready to do this. So, like, let's go, Ryan. Like get back up, get out of the chair, let's go. And that's what drives me forward. And it's always funny because people always ask, like, how do you do that when you're so beat up and you're like mile 80 and the sun's starting to come up again on day 2 and whatnot. And I'm like, I've done the work. That's why I can get up and go. That's why I'm like, okay, I'm strong enough. I can do this. Like, let's go. Let's get going. And that's been a game changer for me. That helps quell so much of the doubt. And, like, when you think about life in general, like, that's very much like in that same vein, right? Like, if you are prepared for the situations, like, living your life and, like, just shotgunning it, a lot of times can be problematic, right? Because if you don't have, like, a strategy or you're prepped for what you're going after, it can be tough. Life can be really hard. But if you followed a plan, if you've been, strategic about your approach, whether that's with college, whether that's with a job, whether that's, you think about, hey, like, if I'm gonna marry somebody, I wanna be all in. I'm not gonna be half in, or I'm not gonna be like, they're not important to me. Like, you're all in on this, right? Like, you give it everything you have. And I think that's where you stop, you end the doubt. The struggle is real. It's always going to be there. But I also think that in the struggle, in the doubt, is where you grow the most. You will grow more there than any other place because that's where you learn that you go from I can't to I can. And that's the game changer. That's the absolute game changer. That's where things change and you become a different person. That's what happened with me at the Wasatch 100 in 2023. I'm excited to tell you my story now about Wasatch because I feel like this was a good lead in. So my very first 100 miler was not Wasatch. It was at the Buffalo 100 on Antelope Island in Utah. It was in 2023, and um, I had always been a marathoner. I'd always been doing marathons. Felt good about it. The year before, I'd done my first 50 miler, and so I was like, "Okay, let's do this. Let's go for it. I want to see if I can accomplish the 100 miler." So March 2023, um, I set off on Antelope Island to finish my first 100 miler. And just for comparison, Wasatch versus Antelope, Antelope is like 6 to 7,000 feet of vert. Wasatch is 23 to 24,000 feet of vert. Um, Antelope is very flat. It's not technical. Most of the trails are very sandy, not sandy, just kind of like good dirt to run on. Wasatch is very technical. At times it's screaming hot, and can just cause problems across the board for people trying to run it, hike it, whatever, however you tack Wasatch. And so I get going, and by about mile 11, 12, I was running with my good friend Nate Allred, and I just knew it wasn't going to be my day. I was not in the game mentally. And I think a lot of that had to do with my prep beforehand. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And that's what caused me to DNF at mile 50. At the time, I struggled with DNFing. For those who don't know what DNF is, it means do not finish. Um, I struggled really hard with that because I I wanted to finish my first 100. I'm like, I've never not finished a race. I've been able to finish every race I've ever done. And so to not be able to finish that was extremely difficult for me. I wanted to finish and be able to just hit a home run and be able to tell everybody I did it. Now, truth be told, there was some other circumstances that happened. A big snowstorm had come in, snow squalls. I learned what a snow squall was out there on the 100 miler. But regardless, I got back to mile 50. It's a 50-mile loop. You do it twice for the 100 miler. I got back after the first loop and I took off my bib, handed it over, and I was like, I'm out of this race. And they asked me, are you sure? And I said, yes, I'm 100% sure. And I walked off the course. Um, I was disappointed in myself at the time, but as I've said multiple times, failure is the greatest teacher. It will help you so much to grow and learn what you should and shouldn't do. And so, I was fortunate to make some really important changes heading into Wasatch. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I just did a race that's supposed to be a lot easier than Wasatch. And now I'm walking into a hornet's nest. Like, how's this going to go over? And I trained. I changed up my whole training process. I hired a running coach. I spent a lot of time climbing mountains. I did a lot of, back-to-back long runs, a lot of, 15, 20-mile runs on the weekends, and just help build up my muscles, get really strong. I dialed in my nutrition, dialed in my hydration, really focused on, strength training, heat training for Wasatch because I knew it was going to be hot. I knew that was going to be a problem. And so, got to that point, felt really, really good, headed into the race in September and, did really good. I felt like my race started very well, was able to stay in the game for the most part for the whole, race. I was super happy. Asking my pacers during that race, they were like, he was the happiest guy ever. He was just so glad to be at Wasatch. This was one of his dreams. But as I got to about mile 81, 82, I was slowing down majorly. And I knew that I'd come to a point where I was in trouble. Um, and I remember my pacer at the time just kept saying, Ryan, you've got to pick it up. Like, you're not going to make it. You're not going to break the 36-hour cutoff window. You're going to DNF. And I remember, like, that's when it finally hit. I was like, oh no, we're in trouble. And, um, I spent some time, praying to my Heavenly Father, asking for my legs back. Um, my pacer also just said the right things to me. He was like, "Hey, you don't know who this is affecting. You don't know how this is going to change, who this is going to change. You don't know what people need this in their lives." And I remember just like saying, like, this is it. I'm going to go all out. Like, I'm going to do everything I possibly can, and we're going to give everything. And I used a lot of faith. I kind of just like, hey, I'm just going to run and just go. Let's see what happens. Took off running, and, yeah, it was wild. I was doing, for that late in the race, and again, you have to remind you that, like, you have to average a 22-minute pace to not DNF, and I was doing, like, a 32, 35-minute pace. All of a sudden, I was down to a 13-minute pace flying down the mountain. I gained all my time back and was able to coast to the finish line and get a 35-hour finish, which again, still an hour, it's still golden hour finish, but, I'll take it. I'll take it because, going from totally being out of the game to finding myself was what changed my life. And, I've talked about this on other podcasts, but something happened there at mile 83 when I was just like, "Hey, you gotta dig deep." And I'd never found it before. I had never found that version of Ryan yet. I didn't know he existed. And I remember just being like, "Hey, like, you can do this." And I had to keep telling myself that, but I didn't really believe it until I started doing it. Because, right, like, let's be honest, it's really hard to mimic running 100 miles, right? Like, not you don't go out and just like, "Okay, we're gonna go run 80 miles today." Not many people do that, and it's probably not advised with any training program. But, you get to mile 80 and you're like, "Hey, I got 20 left. Like, how bad do I want this?" type of thing, right? And so I was just like, I don't know how to get through this. And it was just awesome to have a great friend, Jacob Bateman, there that was just like, I know you can do this. Let's go. Like, I believe in you. Like, it's time to find this. And it's funny because I found that person. I found that person that can do hard things, that can say, "Hey, like, I'm gonna break through this and I'm going to will myself there." I had done the training. I had built up my mental strength. I knew the right things to do. I hadn't made any mistakes. I just needed to execute and believe in myself and have faith in myself that I could do this. And it was amazing because all of a sudden I found my legs and we're going 13 miles down the path, and Jacob's trying to stay up with me, and, he did stay up with me. I shouldn't act like he was struggling there, but he was just blown away, and my crew chief, Nate Allred, was just like, "Dude, I couldn't believe you were moving that fast." And I just found a different version of myself, and that moment has just spearheaded so many different things from, doing the double 100-mile finish of Wasatch and Bear. The last couple of years, they've been a 3-week apart from each other, and I've done that both years in 2024 and 2025. And fingers crossed, we do it again this year in 2026. I'm on the wait list for the Bear 100 this year in 2026. I just got into Wasatch this just a week ago, so excited to be back on Wasatch and go for my fourth finish there. So it's going to be awesome. But that is really that moment in 2023 really helped change my whole life and really helped me to know that, like, I can do hard things. I can overcome things that are really tough, and that I need to believe in myself, especially when I've done the work, I've trained, I strategize, I was prepared. And we did it. And, we got through the dark times. We did the things that really helped, help me be a better person, help me, overcome my doubts. And it's just crazy because I've been able to take so much of what I've learned in ultra running and apply it to my job, my personal life, my relationships with my kids and my wife, my relationships with neighbors, with my parents, with my brothers, you know, whatever projects I have, this podcast, right? Like, for a long time, not a long time, but for, a year or so, I've been thinking about doing this podcast and I've wanted to. And I always am like, well, you're busy with this or you're busy with that. And I'm like, I finally am just like, if you want it bad enough, it's time to go. Like, let's do this. And I really do believe that so many of you listeners need to hear the stories of so many of my friends out there. So many of these runners and bikers and hikers and whatever, we need to hear their stories because they found a deeper meaning. They found a why that is so deep. And I want to hear their stories. I want to hear about the races. I want to hear why they did it. I want to hear about the struggles. I want to hear about the dark times. I want to hear about the doubts. I want to learn from them because they have stuff that we can all learn. I think one of the best parts about being in this world and in this life is that you can continually learn. I want to continue to learn. I know that I can learn a lot from other people. As I always joke, if I had all the answers, I'd be making a lot more money and being, well off or something. I don't know, but I'm not. And so it's important for me to just be like, hey, I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to learn and just continue to try to better myself. So um, you know, some of the things that I'm excited to talk with people about on this podcast is, what that endurance mindset is. I am a running coach as well. And one of my specialties is really helping people develop that endurance mindset. And it really does come down to, whenever I talk to people, it's about putting the work in. It's about, you don't need to go from 5 miles to 50 miles in one week, right? You're going to hurt yourself, but it's adding, it's building the building blocks, right? You don't just when you're building a house, you don't just hope it happens the next day. You build the foundation and you're slowly building pieces until you get that up to a really good spot. And that's how the ultra mindset is built. It's done one day at a time, one piece at a time. And that's why, like, when I coach my athletes, the biggest thing I like to focus on is try to be 1% better. Shoot for 1% better today. If you can be 1% better, your life is going to change. Because, right, if you say, okay, I'm going to be 1% better, can you imagine what would happen after 365 days? Can you imagine what would happen after 3 years? Whatever that number is, over 1,000, maybe 1,100 days. That percent, 1%, what happens? Like, what changes? Like, think about that. And that's the beauty of just being 1% better. I like when people always say, like, how do you do these 100 milers? I'm like, I didn't get good at running 100 milers. I didn't get good at running because I woke up and I had some fantastic genes. There's nobody out there that does that. I know a lot of people think that and they're like, oh, this person's just a natural runner. No, every one of us work for it. We all have to. No one is lucky. No one just makes it happen because guess what? If you think you're good, um, be prepared. You're about to get humbled. You're going to get humbled, whether that's an injury, whether someone beats you in a race, whether you have GI issues, stomach problems, whatever, right? Something's going to happen. You will get humbled. And so, like I always say, you got to stay humble. You got to stay willing to learn. You got to continually grow. But that is how you develop that mindset. You have to continually have the growth mindset and you have to say, okay, I'm in this for the long haul. Because if, you kind of have the mindset, like, I just want to run a half marathon and be done. That's okay, I guess. Um, but running has taught me that I can continually get better. And I've tried to apply this not just to running for me, but like with HR. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to grow stuff, whether it's with my daughters, with like their softball stuff or their volleyball stuff, whether it's with my wife, she has a flower business and really helping her. Sometimes I like to just learn what she's doing, so I have a better idea. I love to listen to people that I work with. I'm excited to bring runners on and learn from them. It's having that growth mindset. That's how you develop that ultra mindset, that endurance mindset, because you got to continually be growing. You got to continually be pushing your boundaries. You can't just say, "Well, I reached the summit. I'm good." If you have that mindset, I personally believe that's kind of a wasted life. If you want me to be honest, I love people who are just like, hey, I just want to continue to grow and move forward because I think life is a great adventure and there's just so much we can accomplish. And that's what's exciting for me. Couple last things that I want to talk about, and then I'll wrap up this episode, this first episode, this intro episode to Reimagine Running. The main purpose why I started this. I've mentioned it before. I'll mention again. I want to hear your stories. If you're somebody who is out there right now and you're like, I have my why and I know what it is. And I'd love to tell somebody what my why is. I want to hear from you. Now, um, I can't get everybody on, I promise. I'm going to try my best. I'll try to have as many people on as possible because every one of us has a why. That's the beauty of it. Every one of us has a why we got into running. Why we do this, whether it's, you want better health, you wanted a better, mental health, physical health, emotional, spiritual health. Um, you're doing it for your kids. You're doing it for someone who struggled with cancer. Um, sorry, that one's a little personal right now for a couple reasons, but sorry, I'm gonna get emotional right now. Sorry, I didn't mean to have that happen. Um, but every one of us has a why, and that's important. Um, it is something that is powerful. If you know your why, you become unstoppable. You can change the game. You can change so much. And I know you can. That's why I want to have you on here. I want to hear your why. I want to know. I'm okay if we have tears. I'm okay if we have anger. I'm okay if we cuss a little bit. That's okay. Like, that's not going to bother me at all. But I want to hear why we did this. I want to hear your why. And I will do my best to get through so many of you who want to come on. I can imagine, um, you know, it could get crazy, but I want to do my best to get through so many of you who have a really cool story to share. And I would love to hear from you. I definitely plan to put like a form out there for people to fill out and would love to have people who want to be a guest on here. Tell me your why. And like I said, if your why is compelling enough, and I feel like it's something that needs to be shared, I'd love to have you on. And again, like I said, I wish I could have every person on, but I also I have a running career, I have a professional career, and I have a family that I adore and I love with all my heart. I love my wife, I love my daughters. They mean the world to me, and I do need to still be a dad. They're still young, they still like me somewhat, so um, I need to I need to be there for them at this point. So, but I do want to hear from you. I'd love to talk to so many of you about your running journeys and your whys. This podcast is for anybody. This podcast is not just for runners. This podcast is for people who are looking for more in life, who you've probably hit something and you're just like, I don't know what I want to accomplish anymore. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to be. Um, I grew up with this mindset that I thought I'd be this and I'm not, and I'm unhappy, not going anywhere. Um, this podcast could be for someone who, is struggling with health right now, mental health, physical health. Be for someone that's in jail, someone that's in prison, who doesn't know if they can ever be a good person ever again. This could be for someone who's tried over and over and over to run a 5K or to run a half marathon and try to hit whatever pace, and you just feel like you can't do it. This podcast is for a person who's maybe run 100 miles quite a few times and just hasn't been able to finish it. This podcast is for any person that just wants more, that's looking for something that will help spark their why in life, why they're here. What are they trying to accomplish? That's what this podcast is for. This is who it's for. So, is there a specific person? No. I think it's for everybody. Something I hope all of you feel after each episode is not so much motivation. I don't want you to have motivation. I want you to be disciplined. I want you to walk away and be like, "Hey, I'm recommitting myself to getting up," because motivation fails. Motivation is fleeting. It will go away. It always is fast. It goes away quickly. Um, don't rely solely on motivation. I've learned the hard way myself personally that it is fleeting. It won't stick around. So I want you to be disciplined. I'm not going to go full David Goggins on anybody, but I want people to be disciplined. If you can be disciplined, you can accomplish anything in this life. You can go to the gym more. You can, get the job you want. You can have the marriage you want. You can do whatever. And I know that's possible. I want people to feel that way afterwards. And honestly, what do I want the show to become? I just want it to become a show that really helps inspire people, helps them become more disciplined. I want people to find their why. I want people to really like figure out that there's more, that there's more. And I want people to be able to tell that. And it's not just going to come from me. I mean, obviously I'll share my stories as we're going through this and relate it with people. I think that's a great way to communicate, but I want to hear other people's stories because it's been awesome in the running community, especially here in Utah, how I have found that so many people, like, I thought I was the only one that found this thing with running. And the more people I've come to know, there's so many of us out there. So I want to find those other people. So, um, what would I tell someone who thinks they're not a runner? I'd say you are. You just don't know it yet. listen to the podcast. We're gonna have tips on here. On my website for at Reimagine Running, I have free training programs. Jump on, download one. If you need accountability, reach out to me. I can help coach you. But if you're looking just for a structure, follow that structure. You're gonna be golden. Um, what would I say to someone just starting? I would say, enjoy the journey. I sometimes miss those days of not knowing what I'm doing and just be like, let's go figure this out. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey. Ask questions. Ask questions from the people who've all done this before you. But enjoy the journey. It's a fun journey. I'm jealous that you get to do it. Because early on was fun. Those early days were an absolute blast. So enjoy it. Um, what would I tell someone who's burned out? Um, find out your why. Why are you doing this? Why are you even running the Wasatch 100? Why are you running the Ogden Marathon? Why are you doing this? Like, what's the point? And trust me, when I coach my athletes, we always talk about this. Like, there is a time and season for everything in life. And if right now running is not the time and season for you, then that's okay. Let's end it. Let's not push it because you, I always say, like, I would hate for one of my athletes or one of my friends to come to me and be like, I lost my job. I lost my marriage. My kids don't like me because I was so committed to running. I would feel awful. And I don't want anyone ever to feel that way. So I really, really always would suggest to you guys, like, if you're feeling burned out, figure out why. Why are you there? And do you need to do you need to recommit or do you need to change stuff in life right now? Because again, running is fun. Running is amazing, but is it like the be all end all? No, because there are things way more important in life that you need to make sure that are a priority. I do think running can enhance your relationships, your family life, your professional life, but there is a time and season for everything. So I'd say if you're feeling burnt out, remember your why, recommit to being disciplined, and let's go. Time to get after it. Um, how can running meet people where they are? Um, Running can help people find where they're at or where they are, just because it's going to help you find out that you're actually living, that you can feel alive. Um, that's the one thing that I always tell myself when I'm running a race is I'm like, right now I'm not numb to the world. I'm not bored out of my mind. I'm not like, oh, like I feel alive. And I think that's where running really helps people um, find where they're at, meet them where they are. Like it reminds you that you're alive and you're doing some great stuff. I want to end by just saying a couple last things. Um, where is my running journey headed? Personally, I've already kind of mentioned I'm planning to do the Wasatch 100 this year at a bare minimum. I'd love to do the Scout 100 in Pocatello, Idaho. I'm on the wait list there, and I'd love to do the Bear 100. I'm signed up for the Ogden Marathon and the Salt Lake City Marathons this year. So that's kind of my race schedule. I have a couple little races here and there throughout that. But that's where my running journey is going this year. My running journey really is to help others. That's what I think my running journey is right now. I'll still run my races. I think right now I need to do this. I need to help create, continue to create a strong community. The community that I've helped build here in Ogden, I helped create the Ogden Marathon Running Club and also the Northern Utah Running Club. We have created a wonderful group, and the group grew from me and Nate Allred and my brother Kyle Head to regular 40, 50 people, a very safe place that many people come and run and they feel included, that they're not judged based off of whatever preconceived notion out there. Um, that's where my running journey is, and that's where I want to be. I want to help other people find what this amazing sport can do for you and do for them. So, what scares me about the future? Um, Staying healthy, right? I'm not young any longer. I'm almost 40. Um, and injuries have been a reality. I've been injured multiple times last year in 2025. I stayed the course, still run my races, but I did them both injured with some pretty beat up knees. But we did it. We got through it. I'd love to stay healthy. I'm healthy right now, outside of a little bit of a cold, but I'm getting over that. So I'm hoping I stay in the game. I hope that's my biggest fear. I think everything else I can try to control as best as I possibly can, and we just take it one day at a time. What am I still chasing? Um, you know, I'm still chasing that dream. One of my favorite songs by Tom Petty. is running down the dream. I'm running that dream down. One day I'll show what that dream is, but I'm still running that dream down. So stay tuned for that one. And then what does success look like now? Success is helping others find running, helping other people come closer to whatever they're looking for in life. That's really, really what I'm after. That's what I'm really hoping to find success with. Um, and that's where I'd like to go. That's the biggest thing that I'm trying to accomplish. Each episode, I plan to end with the same question for everybody, and not like it's anything extraordinary or anything crazy, but I do plan to just end by just saying, you know, if there's one last thing about your why, what is it? What is the one last thing about your why? What is it? And I would say that my last thing about my why is um, I want my kids and I want everybody around me to know that I always cared, that I always tried, um, that I was always in their corner. And I hope that people really believe that. Maybe they won't, but that's my why. That's my last thing about my why is I do care and I want the best for my wife, for my kids. Um, and I hope that with all this running stuff that I help convey that. It's really what I'm after. So, anyways, I'm excited. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I'm excited to go forward. I'm excited for what the future holds. I'm excited for our next guest is going to be Tim Cotterill. Tim is a dear friend of mine, avid runner here in Utah, northern Utah. Tim is he is a Boston qualifier, has done a lot of great races. And one thing I'm planning to do is I plan to have Tim on and help co-host some episodes with me. Tim is a dear friend, someone I'd love to have come on. Me and him laugh a lot. We joke a lot. So I'm excited to have him be kind of my co-host periodically and go from there. So anyways, I'm excited. Just remember, guys, you're not alone out there as a runner. We're one team. Let's get after it. Let's continue to chase after our dream. Make sure you're running after that dream, whatever that is. Chase that why. Make sure you know what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, thanks, guys. Hey, runner. Thanks for hanging out with me today on Reimagine Running. I'm grateful you're here and a part of this great podcast. I just want to remind you, if you ever feel stuck, unsure, or just want someone in your corner, I do offer coaching for runners at any distance. Whether you're starting out with the 5K or you're chasing some crazy big goals and dreams like the marathon or the 100-miler, I'd love to help you. Please reach out and I'd be happy to set up a time to go over options and plans and goals with you. Well, until next time, take care of yourself. Trust the process, stay disciplined, and keep chasing that why.